Now for a book that has all my journalist friends very excited. Apartheid state secrets have been revealed in this new explosive book. People, organizations and entire countries profited from the machinery that was created in defense of apartheid. And the lid is now finally being lifted. An explosive new book sheds light on the economic crimes that emanated during the apartheid era. This book by Henny van Veeren, titled Apartheid, Guns and Money, lifts the lid on some of the things that happened and the people who profited greatly during apartheid. The book is expected to ruffle many feathers, considering the depth of secrets which have been revealed. Now, to talk to us a little bit about the book, we are joined by the author, Henny van Veeren himself. Henny, very good morning to you, and thank you for being with us today.
Morning, Evan. Thank you.
It's going to ruffle some feathers, no doubt. Are you ready for what's coming?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think one sets out to do work like this. Myself in a small organization, I work with Open Secrets, didn't set out to ruffle feathers, but to try and understand an element of our past and how it informs the present in South Africa. It's a secretive element of our past, economic crimes that took place during apartheid. And I think the powerful interest groups which we can talk to that are affected by this have had many reasons to ensure that it remains a black box, a closed book for the last 2 decades.
You talk about economic crimes. Would it be fair to say that economic crimes are one of the bugbears of the modern South Africa? It's one of those things that's really holding us back, are these great economic crimes that have been committed against South Africa?
Absolutely, and I think that the story of economic crime is really about a contestation for power, and it is about the abuse of power by elites, both within the public sector, within government and politicians, and within the private sector. And the story that we are trying to tell, if you like, from apartheid, based on documentary evidence, interviews with over 100 people, and we worked through about 2 million pages worth of documents to produce this book, is to understand the long shadow of economic crime in South Africa, something that didn't arrive yesterday, not a problem only of a democratic South Africa, and we should say a black-led government. It's a problem of power, and it's a problem that leaves us with this dilemma of state capture we're faced with today.
Yeah, there's an entire preamble to the new South African story, isn't there? Tell me quickly about the most interesting things that you would think our viewers would want to know about apartheid, guns and money.
There are even a wealth of bits of information from coups that the apartheid government was trying to organize with Argentina in Europe. They are the most extraordinary stories, to the murder of activists like Dulcie September, who we believe were investigating corruption in arms deals at the time that the French intelligence establishment, the government and others in Europe were working very closely with the apartheid government to illegally supply them weapons. They're surprising pieces of information. China supplied weapons, so the Chinese state-owned arms company Norinco supplied weapons to the apartheid regime throughout the 1980s. It really disabuses this notion of the countries we now regard as allies and those we may not regard as allies were all in this for profit in different ways.
It's very interesting, this kind of information. Tell us about the people and the kind of organizations that kind of will pop out of this book, where people go like, whoop, couldn't quite see that.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talk often about corruption and the role of banks, and I think there was a story earlier this year about the so-called Absa billions. Collusion. And those are important stories, but the book has to us revealed a far more important story about a bank that's little known in South Africa called Kredietbank, one of Belgium's top banks, Europe's top private investment banks, which was involved in establishing an architecture for moving almost R500 billion in today's rand value around the world through front companies in Liberia and Panama, reassembling this cash in Europe, which would be then used to buy the weapons. And I think that these are the names of organizations, the people behind it, their support for the apartheid regime must be exposed for us both to understand what the damage was of apartheid, but also know the names of those who've profited from it.
And to untangle the damage that we see, and we're still suffering from fallout from these kinds of economic crimes, but it boggles the mind, the scale of what went on. In 1992, the National Intelligence Agency of the time, the Apartheid Agency, destroyed 44 tons of important documents. Now, 44 tons, that's a couple of buildings of documents, if I have to visualize it. What was in those documents, and what sort of led into here from there?
Well, Eben, there were these trucks that drove out to the incinerators outside of Pretoria, and they were put into these big furnaces where the steel and metal is produced. Today, the Celso Metal Steelworks, and burnt. And we won't know what was in all those documents, signed off by de Klerk's government, the agreement that these things would happen. But importantly, I think for a young democracy like ours, we need to recognize that there are, in fact, hundreds of meters of documents that remain in the military intelligence archives and elsewhere that should be open to researchers. There's been a call from civil society that the entire apartheid archive must be open. We have the right to know as a public. We have the right to establish the truth and elements of our past.
I want to wrap it up by sort of looking at today, and we are told that, oh, it's so corrupt and it's the end of days. That's how bad it is with unethical behavior in the South Africa of right now. Take us back and tell us about the corruption and the sustaining of the apartheid machinery of the previous time.
Yeah. If anything, I think that there are many reasons why I think we need to be reminded of our past, not only because of the impact it's had on ordinary people, the impact of a racist past, but equally, if we look at the way in which power has been abused, the culture of secrecy during apartheid was almost unfathomable in comparison to what we have today, and a reminder of why we must fight for an open, accountable, democratic society in this constitutional framework we have.
And often we forget that we actually are, and we're very fortunate with the way that we are living today. Because as a young man, I wouldn't have had any of the privileges I had today. And in a way, sometimes we lose focus of where we come from a little bit.
Absolutely, and I think that these types of contributions hopefully are reminders of where we should be going as a country.
Well, it's a fantastic book. Henny van Vuuren, Apartheid, Guns and Money. It's something that all the old hack journos are very excited about. Going to read this one for sure. There's a lot of context. How can you know where you're going if you have no idea where we come from? Apartheid, Guns and Money. Thank you, Henny van Vuuren, for joining us today.
Thank you, Eben.
Professor, just give us a quick overview. What do you